Alright, hey guys, welcome back. Just a quick video today. I'm going to be going over the ways to cheat and win in the UFC. Now, technically all of these things are fouls. They're all immoral. I would say doing these things will make people not like you, and I think rightfully so. I think these are the wrong thing to do, but I also believe that it's a flaw with the UFC rule set, or at least the way that the UFC is officiated in general. Because most of these tactics you will not be penalized for, especially if you're a star, especially if you're somebody that the UFC usually lets you get away with stuff. But even if not, you have a pretty good chance of gaining an advantage in a fight without losing anything from it. And these are very dirty ways to fight. But first, the biggest one, you see who's on here. We got Chris Weidman and Jon Jones. Eye poking. Eye poking is probably the most effective dirty tactic. You rarely see points taken for an eye poke. If you see that, it's only because it happens maybe 3 or 4 times. And eye poking, guys, I've been eye poked. Some of you guys have probably been eye poked. It hurts. You're going to keep fighting, but you're not going to be as effective. You're not going to be seeing well. You're going to be distracted. You're going to be a little tentative to get close to that hand that's out there. Especially when it's a guy like Jon Jones that keeps his hands all the way out in your face the whole time. And yeah, so you're never going to take that whole 5-minute break that you're technically allowed. After like a minute even, the ref will start pressuring you to get back in. And you want to do it for like image, but you're going to be a bit compromised, right? It's going to be harder your defense is going to get a lot worse. You're going to be a lot more cautious. And if you're fighting somebody that is really just better than you in every way, and you're a dirty guy, you have no morals, yep, you should definitely start every round with an eye poke, or at least the first round, get one. You basically have 1 free eye poke, maybe even 2. So just stab that eye as hard as you can, keep going. Again, this is immoral. I think you're a bad person if you do this, but unfortunately there are fighters that exploit this type of thing. Alright, second, fence grabbing. This one isn't as bad, but it can be just as effective. So we saw Conor do this against Khabib. We saw Leon Edwards do this against Usman. I believe Usman did it against Leon Edwards too. I believe Leon Edwards did it against Bilal as well. Or maybe Usman actually did it against Colby Covington. I forget. But this is another very effective method. And honestly, the worst that happens when you fence grab, maybe you get a point taken after, 3 or 4 fence grabs. I'm not sure I've ever seen a point taken for fence grabbing. Usually they'll either ignore it or the referee will put you down in the position. But if you know you're going to be in an awful position, there's no downside to grabbing the fence instead of just going down, accepting that position. Worst case, they put you back in the position that you would have been in. But now you've had a second to think, you've had a second to rest. It's just advantageous in every way to grab the fence instead of just letting your opponent drag you down. Alright, next. This is probably the worst out of all of them, because this can genuinely harm people badly. Like we've seen people die from this in boxing. Thank God never in MMA, or at least never in the UFC. And then obviously this is kind of what inspired this video. Michael Chandler, you'll see him a few more times in this video. Those back of the head shots against Charles Oliveira were nasty. And not only are they bad, not only can they hurt somebody, but they're very effective to help you win the fight, right? If Michael Chandler wasn't able to hit the back of the head, where would he have hit Charles, right? Obviously he was hitting the back of the head because that's what was open, that's what was closest, and that's also what's most effective. There's a reason back of the head shots are banned. It's because those are too damaging, right? They're disorienting. They can mess up your spine, mess up your brain, more than just a normal shot even. So I think this is the most unethical approach. But as we saw, it's also an effective way to fight. It's the ref's job to stop that, right? The refs need to do a better job of really watching back of the head shots. And this 2-inch strip in the back of your head that Michael Chandler was talking about, that's ridiculous. Come on. I think anywhere between your 2 ears, back of the head shot, stop that, stand them back up if you need to. But people like Michael Chandler do use that to help them win fights. Not that Michael Chandler won, but... Alright, then we're getting into kind of the more rare ones. Headbutting. And this is rarely intentional, but I have here a case that it may have been intentional, right? Bobby Green's big headbutt against Jared Gordon. Kind of 50-50 on whether that was intentional, but it messed up Jared Gordon bad. And really, Jared Gordon lost that fight, I believe, on the official record. Even though he clearly lost by headbutt. If you're losing a fight and you have no morals and the headbutt is there, take it. The worst you'll get is probably a no contest, maybe a DQ, but that's very unlikely. And sometimes that even looks better on a record than a loss does. But headbutting is another thing that can seriously hurt somebody. I personally wouldn't mind if it was part of the official rule set so that people could look out for it. I don't think it would be used very often anyway. It's not all that efficient of a strike, but when it's illegal and you do it anyway and it hurts your opponent, often what ends up happening with headbutts is the referee doesn't see it. It's usually unintentional, and it rocks somebody badly, and people assume that it was a strike, and maybe after they get rocked, you're able to follow up with a strike and put them out. So it's just really unfortunate to get headbutted, but I believe there are ways that fighters have used that to win fights. Alright, next, glove hooking. So this is something Michael Chandler does, but also in this case, Oliveira is not just the victim. He's done it too against Makhachev. And this is something that's very hard to officiate because when these guys have their hands wrapped up all over each other, it's pretty hard to tell where the finger's going into the glove, but it's also a very effective way to defend. It makes a lot of, especially rear naked chokes, makes it a lot easier to defend that. Just get the hands up under the gloves. Gives you a lot more leverage to try to pull that hand away. And honestly, even if they're going to take a point, which rarely ever happens, if you know you're about to get submitted, hook that glove and pull that away, right? The worst that's going to happen is they take a point. It's better than being finished. But there are a lot of grapplers that use this and a lot of strikers that use this against grapplers. I think this is probably one of the most prevalent type of fouls in the UFC that people definitely do intentionally. So that's kind of an issue. But it's also a hard one to solve. Maybe something to do with the way the gloves are made, but I don't know. Alright, and then this one's pretty rare, but it does happen. This is fish hooking, probably the most famous recent example. Michael Chandler against Dustin Poirier. Still couldn't get the choke, but reach inside, grab his mouth, turn his head, distract him, just whatever. It's a nasty, dirty foul. But Michael Chandler didn't lose a point for it, got him closer to a submission. This is another effective way to cheat in MMA in the UFC that you're likely not going to be punished for. Yeah, and that's it for today. The main point is just, honestly, I think officiating needs to change, or the rules need to change, or both. Because not many fighters do it, but some do. And it can be a very effective way to win fights by cheating, accepting the possible consequences, knowing that the consequences that you're avoiding by cheating are going to be much worse than whatever the referee is going to do. So yeah, I just wanted to do that real quick. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a nice day.